ready. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all around the world, it is your boy Ali Mehdaoui with the TheMEshow, and I am super fired up, excited, and cannot hide it. I got a rock star, a superstar, an unbelievable, incredible superwoman that's got a lot of love for you. She was born and raised, made out of Chicago, Illinois, lives in the West Coast, aka the best coast right now. Not only a master chaplain, not only an expert when it comes to life elevation, she's a strategist, she's a motivational speaker, she's an author, she's a coach, she's a mentor. She's done so many unbelievable things. Though she looks like she graduated college 6.5 years ago, 30 years of experience in sales and consultancy and real estate and insurance and so many more elements. And let me tell you, she's got that big, huge footprint all over the country when it comes to working directly with government, public administrations, and so much more. And I have the privilege, the opportunity to interview her today and get you a whole lot of golden nuggets. Ladies and gentlemen, give a whole lot of love. If you're not driving, don't touch that cell phone, of course. But if you are driving, don't touch that cell phone. I said that the wrong way, but I think you know what I meant. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Euvonka Farabee with me once and for all. What's up? Super, super excited to have you here with us. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have this exclusive. I know you and I worked on and off a couple of times over the years, months at a time, sometimes weeks at a time, projects here, projects there, online, offline. But here we are. The TheMEshow is to host the great Dr. Euvonka. What's going on? How's your day going so far?
Just going awesome. And I want to thank you so much for hosting me on your show today. I never take for granted when I have these opportunities, and I'm always grateful to
Let's
be able
go.
to share my story.
I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna be getting a lot of nuggets out of you because I want the world to say like, man, Ali, you just hooked me up, and I didn't even pay her today. All right, let's get into it. First and foremost, the world sees and hears your bio, and they hear all the the government administrations that you worked with, or the industries that you've impacted, and the books that you've written, but they don't know that there's a story behind the story.
Yeah.
Well, I read your bio, and first of all, just so you know, I didn't even know that you were from Chicago, Illinois. I thought that you were always a West Coast girl. Tell us a little bit about that story and, you growing up in Illinois and kind of how it morphed into who you've become today.
Absolutely. And, even though I've lived in Southern California for many years, and you'll find this with people from Chicago, there's something about Chicago is that is going to always be my home. And I do have family there, but I was raised there. And with Chicago, it's got factory towns. And so my parents, specifically my mom, was a part of the Great Migration. She was from Mississippi. So in the
Wow.
in the 50s, she was one of the many people who migrated from the South, you know, going after the great promise of these factory jobs that had regular, steady income and pensions. And so she left farm life. She didn't know anything about cities. She had never been anywhere. So it was really scary for her. But, I'm proud when I think about it that she did it, at 19 years old. And so within 3 days, she was able to commandeer one of these factory jobs at a printing company. And that is also where she met my dad, who is a Chicago native. And the reason that it's pivotal is because it tells a story of kind of why, how I was raised and why things kind of went for me in certain directions. I had great parents. They divorced when I was about 4, but that company that they worked for, they both worked for 35 and 40 years, respectively. And they got their pension, they got their gold watches, whatever they do for people who work those jobs. And as a matter of fact, my family comes, they're factory workers, many of them. I was, and my sister, we were first generation to go to college for the most part. I have one aunt that pursued higher education and got a doctorate degree. She forged the way, I guess you could say. But one of the things about my parents, they were always the type of people who said, you know what, you're going to get your education. And you're going to get your education and, you're going to do great things. And you're not going to get your hands dirty like we have to get our hands dirty. So there are a couple things that were always fed to me, and that you get your education, and they wanted me to get one of these corporate jobs where you had security, you can get pension, but they were from an era where you get a job and you keep a job. So this is instilled in me, and I was in agreement, in terms of going to college. But what I found out shortly after I graduated, we didn't know about purpose back then. It was some things that we all know better now, but we didn't know about doing what you love.
Who would have thought about it early on in our lives, right?
Oh no! And my parents, even when I started to talk about it, they thought it was so funny. They were like, "You mean like what you do? That's funny." Now, get in there. So what happened? I commandeered a position, first as an intern, but then upon graduation, in an engineering organization of a Fortune 100 company. Well, that was like the bonanza for my mother specifically. That was like, you've done it and you've made it. And so a lot of people believe like that. But the problem is that I absolutely hated the job.
Mm.
Not this, and there was nothing wrong with the job, by the way. I'm no engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm no engineer by any stretch of imagination.
Mhm.
And day in and day out, I think at that job I was probably mediocre at best. At best, I trying my hardest, but I was able to survive just by the grace of God because of the skills that I did have, my people skills, certain negotiation skills. They found that I was able to get people into meetings. If you know anything about computer programmers and engineers, they hate meetings.
Mm.
And so because I was always milling around and having conversations, even when people didn't want to have conversations, I was able to kind of negotiate, people into a room. And they also had me managing a team eventually, mostly to get me out of the lab where I was not
Yeah.
really, really productive. But I was able to kind of find my way, still not really understanding the importance of having certain skill sets and the value that those skill sets bring, even though, these things were happening for me. So I eventually get out of engineering and into sales, and I get into technical sales. So I'm able to use some technical skills. And that was a little bit better for me. Moving, even out of that into the pharmaceutical world, I ended up in pharmaceutical sales. And that was a little bit better for me. But by this time, I'm pretty much regularly pulling down a 6-figure income.
Mm.
So now what I've done is I've built a life, based upon a certain income level. I didn't know about money. I didn't know about investing. I knew how to spend money and those kind of things. But I did do certain things, like I invested in real estate. I began to buy property. I began to flip property. But guess what happens? 2008.
And 8. I see. I said that. I kind of knew that was coming. I
You know
heard
that was
that
coming?
coming from a mile away. Go on. 2008.
2008, the economy crashed and
Yeah.
it changed everything. It
Yeah.
changed everything.
Talk about a reality check, huh?
Absolutely. Not only I was laid off of a job, my 6-figure job, by the way, that I thought that I couldn't live without, because what I do want to point out, there was always kind of these things inside of me where I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I
Mhm.
had these ideas, but I would always push them down because how could I ever afford to do that? And I remember at one point when I was in the engineering organization, I went to my mother and I said, I got to do something. And at this time I'm like 22, 21, 22 years old. And I said, I got to find something different to do. I can't. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this job. I stink at it, and I hate it so much. But my mother's response, she was so mortified. She was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean you're going to quit this
Yeah,
job?"
because the mindset was like,
Yeah,
you've made it, and especially the belief system from prior to your generation now is, if you made it to a certain level, you already made it big time. So it messes with that belief system
it
of,
does.
yeah, which creates probably the pushback that we get from our families, and a little bit sometimes even resentment from lack of understanding. Like, what do you mean you want to give up and change this 6-figure lifestyle? But go on.
And it wasn't remember, my parents, they kept jobs for 40 years. This is what people did.
Hmm.
It was the worst thing in the world to quit. So their thing is, you just stay where you are and you try to make more money, and you go higher wherever you are, you know. So my mother said, not, you know, knock off this crazy talk about quitting this, you know, good job that you have. You're going to get back there and make as much money as you can get those people to pay you, and, you know, and just,
Isn't it funny though? Like even as grown ups, when our parents would tell us, "No, you're gonna get your butt back to your like you're grown and you got your own job, your own money," but I'm still telling you what you're going to do. And you're like, yes, yes, mom, I'll think about it.
and that's exactly what happened, because I went right back there because it played on my fears as well,
Yeah,
because of the belief, the limiting beliefs and everything that was
sure,
instilled, you
sure.
know, with this mindset.
Yeah.
So it played on me with that as well. I remember, even as I told you, I was progressing through my career and I was changing companies. I literally would, if I was going to quit my job, I would have the new job,
Hmm.
and I would get at least one or two checks under my belt before I would tell my mother. Because if she were getting ready to freak out about me quitting, it's like, oh, too late. I already got paid. Look, I already got paid.
Mm,
You know, she's like, oh, okay. You know, oh, okay. But this is all programming me, you know, to be change averse.
yeah,
And
it's
also did
generational
not,
programming too.
yes, and it
Hmm.
did not teach me also how to make calculated risks, which is important when you are evaluating your life, especially if you want to walk in purpose, if you want to walk in the will of God, which is, you know, what I coach on so much now in terms of the importance of that. That's a faith walk, but there are calculated risks in that really you can evaluate to manage fear. Because the thing is, you know, you hear the false evidence appearing will, forget everything and run. Well, you can change it into face everything and rise. But how do you do that? You know, so most things that I've learned about fear and what I coach about management of fear is that, you know, people can manage real issues and not boogeyman issues. So look at exactly what it is that you're afraid of, because there's some wisdom in fear.
Hmm.
So is it something that just requires some strategy? Maybe it's some strategy around it. Maybe I can plan. Maybe I can add some resources. Maybe I can get some mentorship. There may be some solutions. But then there's the thing that you're just afraid because, you know, it's the big scary thing. We can't manage those things. Those are mindset things. So those things have to be dealt with in changing a mindset. But you really have to evaluate. You can't put your head in the sand
Hmm.
and then, you know, hope it all goes away, because then you don't make decisions to move forward in your life. You don't take chances. But before I knew any of what I just said, when that economy crashed, several things happened. Because this is why having a plan is important. Because usually when somebody tells you when something happens, it's always 30 days. You don't have time. Even though they say you have 30 days, you have 30 days to find somewhere to live. You have 30 days to find another job. The first 2 weeks is shock and awe. You know, if you have nothing to pivot from, what it's going to do is going to force you into areas where you have not had any kind of calculation of any wisdom, even if you don't have all the answers to the
One
test.
hundred percent.
Yes. So when this happened to me, I didn't have any plan. I never gave my life any consideration. Everything was about, you know, staying in jobs that, you know, was mediocre, you know, but they were, I was earning well. And so I was laid off my 6-figure job that I had, which I never would make the decision to quit. Sometimes, you know, things force you into doing what it
Yeah,
is that,
I love the way you just put that. You know, God is like, hey, I gave you every single hint for you to go, but you're like, I'm gonna try it anyways. Like, hey, that's really not good for you. I'm still gonna try it anyways. Like, all right, fine, I'll fire you.
exactly. And you would think that that was enough, but I just didn't
Yeah,
even though I was a Christian, even though I believed I knew the word of God, even though I love God, would I always say to the best of my ability, I didn't realize how superficial my relationship was with the Lord until these things happened, you know.
usually it takes a storm and you to go underwater for you to say, here's my hand, pick me up, please.
And I was underwater, and I was underwater for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was because I had to get to the end of myself, and it literally took years.
Mm.
So I got divorced during this time because it was already an arduous marriage, and this just added to it. And so after about 10, 12 years, my marriage ended. I didn't have my job, and so I did what I do not recommend anybody to do. I said,
Pay attention, y'all. This is important. When somebody says, "I recommend not to do this," it's
never
probably
to
the
do
most
this.
valuable lesson you're gonna get. This is other people's mistakes. The most expensive one are your own. Other people's mistakes are cheap. So listen, take note. Go for it.
learn learn for this. For one, you want to have a life plan. But because I didn't have a life plan, I said, now I'm reeling from a divorce. I'm reeling from a job loss. So my faculties, I'm not firing on all
Hmm.
cylinders. Okay. I said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to start a business.
Mm.
And I was not stable. I
No, I
didn't have,
get it.
uh,
Financially or emotionally, at that
or
matter. Yeah,
emotionally.
yeah.
So I get into a situation that I started an insurance agency. And I didn't know anything about insurance. I did it strictly based upon trying to get back to the financial place that I was. It was a money, I could make money doing
Yeah,
this.
if you try to live by the money, you will die by the money. Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. So I ended up signing a really bad contract with the company that I was contracted with to have this agency. It was a captive agent. I won't mention their name. They don't have that contract anymore. But I signed a really bad contract. Really, at the end of the day, it was my fault because I didn't do my due diligence, and it was an emotional decision. Um, and it was 7 years of toil, 7 years of
You've done it for 7 years with a bad contract.
yes, trying to. And
Yeah.
they were expecting me to die at 3, but I've somehow pressed out to getting close to 7 years. But I should have quit even before that. But because I didn't know how to let go, and in terms of making a life plan, I just kept, treading water until I was going under. So at the end of the day, I found myself, I laid off every employee that I had. I was trying to run the agency by myself at this point because although I was bleeding money, it was, I was able to eat. So, but what ended up happening, it got so bad that I was facing eviction, not only in my business location, but in the apartment that I lived in at the
Boy.
time.
Yeah, to talk about a double down with that financial stress, the emotional stress, and wow. And here's my $1 million question on this. Did you reach out to mom or anybody say help?
You know what? I didn't. As a matter of fact, I had an incident, and it's interesting that you mentioned that. I had an incident where I had some cousins that I hadn't seen in a while. They're close family members, but since I live, in Los Angeles, they live, in the Midwest. Hadn't seen them, but they were going to be in LA, and they wanted to see my office. They hadn't seen my digs. They were like, "Hey, we hear about this great office you have, right? All the stuff." It was inside. I was like, really not feeling like hosting anybody, but what can I do? They're coming, let them come to my office, whatever. So they come to my office, and I can't make this up, Ali. I'm sitting there, and it was 7:30 at night. I forgot to lock the front door to my office. My office is closed. I don't have any customers there, whatever. So my cousins are in there, and I forgot to lock my office door. Why did a process server come in and serve me my notice to vacate in front of all of my family members?
Oh, talk about like awkward.
And they were confused because they didn't know because it kind of happened kind of fast. But that was the final straw for me. And it's so funny because sometimes I leave that part out. It's a really heavy part of the story that people can't handle sometimes.
No, but
I
I
don't
appreciate I appreciate your vulnerability because most people tell us the good shiny objects, right? Like, look at me, look at the books, look at
exactly.
the stages, and it makes the person that's going through some stuff right now feel like I'm never gonna be you. I'm never gonna reach where you are because I'm going through a very mucky situation. So when I hear your story, I'm so grateful for what you're sharing with us. And I am an advocate of all of us combined. I think you know my story. Like the last 2 years have been terrible for us. I mean, we went from like, multiple six figures in crypto accounts and, like retainers left and right to gone, all of it. And that's because we were trying to save what we had, not realizing that the market is changing, the economy is changing, inflation is happening, COVID just beat up a lot of people, and so much more. IRS came after us. So those are important factors,
Yeah.
because when anyone is listening right now, I want them to know you're gonna go through some stuff. It's part of the journey, but just like me and just like Dr. Euvonka, days too shall pass, especially if you have the right moral and spiritual compass, everything always works out. But go on, please.
And when that happened, I made a decision that I had not ever been willing to do before, and that was to let go,
Mm,
to let everything roll
let go and
downhill,
let God.
let all the chips fall where they may. I said, you know what, that's it. And so as soon as I did that, I remember I was sitting in my office by myself. I said, God, I don't care what it is that you want me to do. I'll even be a minister if that's what you want. If you want that, I'll do that. I didn't realize what I was.
Careful what you ask for, right?
But here's the thing about that. God had already been speaking to me about ministry, which I had no problem with, but I want to do it on my terms. I want to do it when I can fit it in. I threw money at a lot of stuff. Now, I do the missions work, internationally, whatever. I threw money at other people to go, you go over to Africa, you go to Asia. Here's a donation. Stuff that God was speaking to me about. And the reason I was even connecting with it, but I was not even open because why? I wanted business first. I was called to the marketplace, but ministry was primary for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not make the decision to do it. But when I said it, as soon as I said it, things began to shift for me.
Thank God.
They began to shift. Now, mind you, financially, in terms of the stability, it took a minute. I bounced around a lot. I bounced around. And uh, I end up being open to, and I became a prison chaplain later, but I never would have a million years considered prison ministry. I have a brother who's deceased now, but, from the time, we were, teenagers or whatever, he had gotten hooked on drugs.
Mm,
And so this was very traumatic for my family. My mother was not a drug user or a drinker. We didn't have alcohol in our house. And he started out as a teen alcoholic. And as things progressed, he would be in and out of the Cook County jail system, because that's what comes along with that. And we didn't know how to manage it as a family. We were just a family in crisis. We didn't have therapists and all the stuff and the treatments and the things that people know about now. We were just struggling. So one of the things that it had done for me, because I was close, he was an older brother for me, and I looked up to him a lot, but I was so angry because as a teenager, I remember being so mad and saying to him, you always choose drugs over your family, but that's not how addiction works. You know, I didn't
he doesn't
understand
even
that.
realize or think about it that way. It's
Mhm.
probably the hurt.
Yeah, and then it's the lack of knowledge too. We didn't. It wasn't about understanding what somebody, regardless of how they got it. They made the decision to take drugs. Once you're addicted, there's science in that. The thing is a sickness. And so I didn't have any of that understanding. And I just remember always being angry. You choose drugs over your family, and he would come up missing for long periods of time, and because he didn't want me to see him like that. So um, I didn't realize as an adult, I still carried that. And it wasn't until he passed away, and this is around the same time I'm going through all the stuff with my business. It's all happening at the same time. So I get word that my brother passes away. And when we go to embark on, all the families coming together to go to this funeral, this is what really changed my heart, and I was really convicted. So my brother was married, to a lovely woman, not drug addiction, didn't drink alcohol, very codependent. Because if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody like that, you have to be super codependent. But when we all get to the wake, my family is kind of feeling kind of the same way. Like, you know, we were sad, but we weren't surprised because of his lifestyle. But what I noticed, Ali, about the family, they were very different. These people were not Christians. They didn't proclaim to be Christians. But I noticed the sadness. I noticed the grief where my brother was concerned. Now, they knew him even better than I did at this point because this part of his life he spent with them. And I just began to take note. There wasn't the frustration that I was feeling with the whole
Yeah.
situation. And so he had three stepchildren, and the stepdaughter comes to me and she says, um, you know, I don't know, I feel led to tell you this, but I want you to know that your brother was very important to me. He was the only man that ever spoke anything positive to me in my life. He always wanted me to do better. I never had that experience before he came. She said, sure, he didn't keep a job like men. She said, let's face it, that wasn't, his story, but I want you to know this is what he did for me. And I said, thank you for sharing that with me. Then he has another stepson that stood up and said how his mother, my sister-in-law, never smiled because of the situation they had before my brother came along. Never smiled until my brother came along, and the joy that she had and that he was able to witness,
Yeah.
Then the last thing was the daughter had a toddler. And so they had this little step stool up by my brother's casket. And we're at the wake and everybody's standing around and talking. And this little girl keeps trying to climb up on the casket where my brother is, and they keep pulling her down and pulling her down. So I'm noticing this out of my peripheral vision, and I finally say, what is she doing? They said, oh, she thinks he's sleeping. And the last time before he went to the hospital, the way she would go to sleep every night is she would lay on his chest, and that's how she would go to sleep. So she's trying to climb up on his chest. In that, with all that I'm telling you, and if I'm going too long, let me know. With all of that I'm telling you, what it did is it made me take stock of myself. I was the one that was supposed to be the Christian. I'm the person in the room. And they love my brother like God loved my brother.
Mm.
Not with all the conditions like what I had. And they all knew of his condition. They all knew, but they were able to see the good in him. His
Seeing
sister-in-law.
beauty in the circumstance itself.
Yes, it was not the life I would have chosen. Everybody, what it did for me, nobody's life is a waste. Because one of the things I used to tell my brother is, why do you waste your life? You're a gifted writer, and you waste your life. Nobody's life is a waste. So it changed my whole nomenclature and how I speak in terms of what I
I do
embody.
have to say, one thing that you've mentioned, I did. They loved my brother like God loved my brother, not with the condition that I seen him in. In regardless of what circumstance, that's the definition of conditional love, right? Like you loved him, but in a way that, hey, if you change this behavior, I would love you even more. And we see
Yes,
that in relationships. We see that in every single way. Like, everybody's like unconditional love till death do us apart. Well, I bet you if I'd say, hey, I'm gonna quit my 6-figure job and go after my dreams, you're gonna be like, wait, what do you mean? No, that's not what I wanted, right? It's gonna come with 3 years worth of financial stress because that's my dream. No, we're not gonna do that, right? So there's a lot of, I think, lack of understanding of what unconditional love truly means, and I think which leads to ministry. That path that opened up for you. I want to put a little pause because I want to take a little bit of a break. After we come
yes,
back, I'm going to dive into the decision of getting into ministry, and then all the things that you have from the Rise Up event. From your books and all the different programs that we have. So stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. Got to pay some bills, and we'll be right back.
If you're tired of the same old routine, don't worry. We've got your back. You were made for more. LeaveShackleFree.com helps you break free emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Start your freedom journey today at LeaveShackleFree.com. Break free, leave free.
Ready, ladies and gentlemen. We are back like we've never left with Dr. Euvonka Farabee. Before the break, we were talking about how, you were going through like everything going kind of out of whack. And you're like, Lord, if you just want me to do even ministry, I'll even do that, which morphed into a whole journey of you watching your brother in a way that you loved him, but everybody else loved him like God loved him. And it kind of opened up this possibilities of you kind of making some decisions on ministry and a whole different side of your life. Let us know, how did that kind of come about where you said, all right, fine, ministry time?
I will tell you why that story I just told you about my brother is relevant, because the realization that I did not love my brother like God loved him or Christ loved him, it also brought about the realization that I also didn't love myself the way God loved me.
Mm.
And so, in that realization, this is why I um, kept things from my family when I needed help. This is why I did, because of the shame and the embarrassment, and also ego, because people are thinking, oh, look, now she has her own insurance agency and she has the signage and she has all the
So you're gonna
stuff.
have you're living up to an image that people
Yes.
don't realize, like, hey, this looks good from the outside, but from the inside, I am sinking in.
And also the false narrative that Christians are supposed to live in abundance, and they're supposed to, so all of this superficial stuff where contextually, in terms of really what is important to God, he wants us to be prosperous, but not independent of him, not independent of the will that he has, not independent. He wants us to have the stuff but not have the stuff have us. And at this point, the stuff had me. So he started to strip everything. And so the things that were working for me stopped working. All the stuff where I thought I knew the business know-how, the real estate investment know-how, the market changed. People, you couldn't even get it in those deals while my credit was still halfway decent. It didn't even matter. People had cash deals. They were coming in and doing stuff. I didn't have cash flow. It was all these things that were changing. But that situation with my brother, it really helped me to begin to soul search. Like, God, what is it that you really want from me, and why? He began to show me why I was unwilling to even obey him in the first place. The way I viewed ministry, the way I viewed business. One was, to me, in the pecking order. One was more fun and better. It had a better image. I had to deal with all those things because they're not of God. So, but once I really began to embrace what he wants, now he put in me a desire to want to look into prison ministry, which seems so random. I mean, I remember when I first started doing it back in 2015, people were like, "What?" You know?
You're doing what now?
Yeah, exactly. Because I never expressed it at a interest. But what my brother's situation did, it really changed how I saw all people. It didn't matter if they had $1 million or if they had $1. Even the way I saw people on the street, the way I saw people, I never made assumptions about their life, and it made me much more empathetic. But God began to show me how to rebuild my life on a blueprint that was founded in him. Because what happens with all of us, if we build our lives on a blueprint that is faulty, meaning, just with the culture, what the culture says is successful. When you build a whole life on that, it's not stable. So when things happen that are out of your control, it's liable to come crashing down in a million pieces. That's what happened to me. But what God showed me is how to take the rubble that lied at my feet, all of the broken rock and shattered glass, and pick pieces of it to begin again, and to be able to build a mosaic of my life that was beautiful. And I didn't have to forget about those things, but I was able to leverage them. It wasn't about forgetting that happened to me. It was about, how can I use this to leverage and push me forward and propel me into the greatness that God really has for me. And that's when I began to use a lot of the skills that I had, not only working with incarcerated people, but also the skills that I'd used in situations helping people in ministry in the church. I
Would
began to.
you?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, would you say it was also, and you may say no, absolutely not, but would you say it was also some kind of therapy for you, selfishly speaking, like that you are kind of living still with your brother through all these brothers that you are working with? Yeah.
And, and I'm glad you brought up therapy, because I had to do that. There's ministry is great. going to your pastor is wonderful. But what I've learned, there is a skill set that people have that sometimes you gotta, and this is one of the things that I do. I have therapists that I partner with so that I know when I get beyond my skill set that it is time to refer to someone
Mm.
who can give someone a different kind of help. And if you're a believer specifically, and if you're leery, you can get somebody who has the same belief system as you, but has some additional skills because they're professionally trained. It's important. And it was important for me to deal with a lot of why I was the way I was to begin with, things that in our life that happened to us. But you could take every single thing that you've ever been through, and I don't care how bad it is. I don't care how shameful it is. You could take it and God will help you leverage it for your good. He always takes everything we've gone through and makes it for our good. As long as sometimes we need help to be able to walk through that journey of rebuilding from the rubble. What piece
Preach.
are we picking up? What can I do with what is before my hand? What is it that I can be helped with? And that's one of the things when people desire to have business, when they desire to have ministry, or they have, desire to do things. I know I've helped women that really overqualified to do some of the stuff they wanted to do, but they were like, oh, I can never do that because I don't know the people. Oh, I can never do that because I don't have the connections. Oh, that's all limiting beliefs. It's all. I like one lady that I'm thinking about. She says, and she was a social worker for years, and she was great, with young girls. She had a passion for it, but she had been through some trauma, in terms of sexual abuse as a young girl, as a 4-year-old. And it always kind of made her, from the time that happened to her, made her doubt her own worth and her own ability, so that she never would step fully into what she wanted to do. But as we began to kind of, peel back the onion on these things, and she was able to address some key issues. One of the things she wanted to do, it sounds simple, but maybe if you don't have the connections, it might be a little bit difficult. But it turned out she did. She wanted to be a college professor, and she wanted to teach social work in a community college setting. Well, as she begins to deal with her issues, and now her mindset is getting dealt with a little bit more. Now she's able to revisit what she has. Who are the people, that she knows that can actually, talk to her about what it takes to do that? What are the next steps that you need to take? What is it that you want to accomplish? If you do that, what is it that you would really want that to do for you? She began to think about this. So even though in a moment you may not execute a plan, it's important to have a life plan and to give your life some thought so that when things out of your control happen, you have something at least to pivot from.
I love that.
You
No, I
understand
love
what
that.
I'm saying?
Oh, no, I get it totally, utterly, 100%. Lived it, been there, done that. It's like we are lost cousins. Yeah, I totally get it. Hey, talk to me about some of the things that you have right now. I know that you have the Rise Up event coming up. What's up with the Rise Up event?
What it is, it's not an event per se. It's a coaching program.
Tell me more about it.
It is
So it's an experience, not an event. An experience. You got to experience
it's
it.
an experience.
Yeah.
So it is rewrite your life story. So part of what I just kind of started to talk about, I deal with it in 3 phases over 12 weeks. And so the first phase of it, we really we don't look into, oh, I want to start this business. I want to, we don't get into the details of that. We kind of pick one thing that speaks to a person's heart, that really, why have you been held back up till now? This is something you've been thinking about for 15 years and it kind of hasn't, kicked off. And, it's around, well, I thought when the kids got older, I would be able to. Or I thought, when it's almost time for me to retire, when I retire, I'm retiring in 4 years, so I'll do it then. Anything can happen in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can call and take, let me tell you, I worked at a company one time where they had their first layoff, at this company that people weren't used to. And I watched them lay a woman off 1 week before she would have gained her full retirement. Like she significantly cut. They laid her off 1 week before that happened after she worked for the company over 30 years. Anything can happen. So if I don't know if we have time, but I'm gonna tell you that I have a story that I would like to tell if I have a moment.
Please, yeah.
So, and I'll get back to rewrite your life story, but why it's important. So there was a man at the same job that worked with us, and one of the things he loved was auto restoration in terms of classic cars. It was a hobby of his. It's all he seemed to talk about. On the weekends, he was restoring a car with his son. That was their thing they did together. He also used to kind of make some money on the side, helping other people restore cars. He had the magazines. It was the whole thing. And I knew him for a number of years. When this layoff happened, the way they did it is they would call, everybody's working in this particular area. When they tapped you on the shoulder, you know that it was time for you to go. And you were probably going to get laid off. And so everybody just tried to stay focused and not stare people in the face when this is happening. So there were 3 instances that happened. One guy fainted. Before I felt so bad for that guy. Somebody else, it was a devastating situation. But this particular guy with the auto restoration, he goes in the office. They tap him on the shoulder. When he came out, he looked relieved. And I remember that look on his face. What I found out shortly after is that he had plans. He had business plans. He had tried to find, loans and things like that for this auto restoration company. It never would work out. Like over a 10-year period of time, him and his wife had massaged the numbers on this a million times. It never would work out. They always would update the plan though, and they never knew how they were ever going to get started. But when he got laid off, they gave him a severance. And that severance is what he was able to use to leverage for himself to start the auto restoration business. His wife stayed in her full-time job, but in a year and a half, she was able to quit her job and join her husband.
Join him. Yeah, see, God's got a funny way to get you on the right path.
He does. And if you can imagine never having money, it's going to cost this money. They always had their budgets. It never would work out until it worked out. But it was because he had something to pivot from. So if you don't have anything because you're thinking, oh, that'll never happen. How will I ever get the money? You don't worry about that. Just make sure that you're giving some thought to your hopes and your dreams so that life can align itself the way that it should. And you can have something to leverage and you can use everything that hasn't worked out and have it work out for you because why? You're stronger. You're smarter. You're moving in a more intelligent fashion. So when you get back to rewrite your life story, what we do in the first part of this, deal with what it is that you think that has made life so hard for you. What is it that, has stopped you from having relationships, has stopped you from starting your business, has stopped you from getting along with people. Yeah. So when you can't deal with everything, you start at the most thing that's the most pivotal for the time. We work through that. And then from there, we're able to now, let's cast a vision for what you want. We're going to cast it for a particular period of time and what it is that you see for yourself. And then come with a plan of action on the third part of it for 1 year so that you can begin to walk that out. And I tell people, don't dumb it down so that you can build it so that it's scalable. Maybe if it costs you, $2 million to do something, okay, you don't have $2 million. This is something you don't have to show anybody else until it's time, but don't dumb it down. If that's what it's going to cost, lay it out and then begin to ask and see how you can reverse engineer. What do you need to do to prepare? What do you need to do to shift? Begin to do those things. Who is it that you can work with? Who can you volunteer for somebody? It depends on what it is, but we look at all these things so that at the end you have a tangible plan that you can adjust and you can start to really think about what it is that's important to you. It's funny when people look at these things sometimes, the things they thought were important are not so important anymore. Maybe they want to be able to spend more time with their family, but they don't know how that's ever going to happen because they're in some job that they hate. But
And blinded by the circumstance versus the
uh,
actuality of what we need to focus on. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. So that's what we do when we look. I do it on individual basis, and I also do group coaching.
Group coaching as well, right?
Mhm. And
Yeah.
then I also do servant leadership training as well for companies. Established for churches, for organizations, nonprofit organizations, because a lot of what is needed in companies, even as they're established, is cohesion in their team. And there's a lot of reasons that people don't have cohesion in their team, and a lot of it has to do with the lack of trust in leadership. So I do leadership training as well.
Oh, did I just hear what you said? You just hit us with the doo doo. You doo doo?
Did I
You
say
just got
that?
with the doo. If you know, it's so rare when the doo doo happens, and I feel like I want to look. Whomever visits, live shacklefree.com, and we'll make sure it's in the caption. And just whether you get a book or at least you opt in for the newsletter, we're gonna give you. Let's say a 2-night, 3-day vacation, all inclusive, either Mexico or the Caribbean, lodging, food, and beverage. You just got to cover your taxes and, of course, your flight whenever you're ready. So, but when you do, you got to say "doo doo" in the message itself, so Dr. Euvonka knows exactly what that you were getting the actual vacation. There you go. Has that helped? How's that? We just got
That that helps.
all right.
That helps.
Don't be surprised if your inbox floods with doo doo. That means they listen, right? All right, good stuff. But go on. Let me ask you this: what do you prefer? I mean, I know whatever serves, whatever helps, but do you prefer group versus individual coaching, or vice versa?
I
What's more?
prefer group.
Yeah,
I do prefer group, and for a variety of reasons. I think people learn from each other when you do group coaching. There's me, and of course, I'm coming from a place of understanding and wisdom, I believe. But there is nothing like when people are learning from other people, and not only their situations, but even sometimes their feedback. People have a lot to offer, and then there's community in that. And many of us need community. We need community. It's really important.
from golden handcuffs to divine purpose. Tell me about how that came about, and the focus of the book itself.
Uh, that book is really my business testimony. A lot of what I've talked to you all about, it birthed that book because what I wanted people to understand is how I got there and what brought me out. And so the from golden handcuffs, that comes from a saying that we used to use when I worked in corporate America.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, are you familiar with the term golden handcuffs? It's where you're making an income that is hard to let go
They pay
because
you just enough to give up on your dreams.
exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was the story of my life because you really do have in your head many times that I can't do without this. I remember telling a good friend of mine who he and his wife worked for the same company that I worked for, and we were all making, what we considered great money, And I said, he wanted a business so bad, and he was so wanting to, get out, but it was not. He had children, he and his wife we worked for the same company, and we were facing the layoff, and I had already been laid off, and I was already in my own business, and he said, "Oh, I sure wish I could have my own business." And I'm like, I want to encourage you. You should, look into having your own business. And then he said to me, he said, Euvonka, because I don't have any children in my home, I didn't have a husband. He says, when you eat, everybody's full. So I knew exactly what he meant by that. He had other considerations. He had a spouse that he, would have had to talk into that situation. But what's interesting, even with him, he ended up getting laid off. Fortunately, it didn't happen to both of them at the same time working for the same company. But he took that opportunity. His wife backed him, and he began to try other things so that he didn't have to go back. Um, so you could take a situation and use it for your good, but you want to have a plan.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I love the sound of that. We're going to take one more break. And after we come back, we're going to get into your vision. What are projects that are coming up? What is, happening in Africa? And how do you desire to see the world in your own terms? And of course, I can't wait to hear the visionary side of Dr. Euvonka Farabee. So stick around. We will be.
If you're tired of the same old routine, don't worry. We've got your back. You were made for more. LeaveShackleFree.com helps you break free emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Start your freedom journey today at LeaveShackleFree.com. Break free, leave
Welcome
free.
back, ladies and gentlemen. Ali Mehdaoui here with the doctor herself, Dr. Euvonka Farabee. First and foremost, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us so far. Your vulnerability, your honesty, your truth, and there's a difference between truth and honesty, right? Truth are the facts. Honesty is opening up, the parts that you keep to yourself. And I appreciate that you've done that for our viewers and listeners today. But I'm intrigued. What's next? Where do you see the next 24 months? And, what is exciting that you really want to go pedal to the metal with?
Well, thank you for asking, because I am excited about the future of Live Shackle Free. One of the things I desire to do, one is to give people a voice, is to help to leverage your stories, because telling your story, learning to tell your story in a way that is meaningful, not only to you, but will be meaningful to others, is really important, not just for the people in the world who hear it, but also for the individual that is the teller who's telling it. And I do my desires to do that through a couple of specific vehicles. One, through the writing of stories and books. So the immediate future, I'm formulating a publishing company so that can happen, but also so that they can leverage their books and create courses, online courses from their books for those that it's appropriate to do so. The other thing is to help people tell their story in terms of speaking and how to become more proficient at telling their story so that they can better help more people as they desire to. Because many people desire to tell their story and they want to give their testimony, but they don't know how. And they have such powerful and meaningful stories that could help so many people, but they just need the guidance and the direction and the coaching. So I'll be providing that as well.
Nice. Well, that's exciting. Who, if anybody is listening to this, who would you like to connect with and collaborate with?
I would like to collaborate if someone is already thinking that they want to write a book, but they don't know how. They don't know how to get the ball rolling, because it can be very daunting if you don't get it. I remember my first desire to write a book, I was 12 years old. And I remember getting a piece of notebook paper, and I wanted to write about my summer vacation. And it was going to be a book in my 12-year-old mind, because I thought I had a great summer vacation. And I remember having a pencil, and I wrote the first line, and then I didn't know where to go from there. Many people don't know where to go. And it was many, many, many years later before I would figure out where to go. So I want to help people to be able to do that. If you've never written a book and you want to, if you're thinking about publishing, like you already, have a manuscript and you want to publish, I want to connect with people like that too, because the desire is also to create a community of people who are like-minded, who want to tell their stories as well. And we can all help each other in that. So I want to formulate that community. And then
I love
people,
that.
I'm sorry.
No, I just said I love that. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just giving you your flowers.
Thank you. And then also, thirdly, people who have a book, but they want to change it and they want to turn it into a course.
Interesting.
And they want to take that book and they believe they have the makings of a good course that they can parlay from that book. I'm especially interested in connecting with people who are interested in that, because that is something that I can also assist them with.
Love that. In terms of I had a former colleague of mine who used ChatGPT to write a fictional 3-part book
Mm,
with like 100 to 300 pages per.
wow.
And but that's just the writing part. And the reason I'm bringing this up, what is your message to the person that thinks I can do it all with AI? While the artificial intelligence is a great tool, a great asset, God only knows I use it more than I drink water and eat all day, every day. However, there's a need of a human element that you could
Yes.
be making some mistakes that the AI is not going to catch. And the experience that you have could catch that. So speak on that a little bit, because ignorance is our biggest enemy right now, right? Like a lot of people think, oh, I can get free content from YouTube, or I can go ahead and use AI or Chat GPT, and please speak on the importance of having the right partner in your life in that project versus just dealing with a computer and learning from a very expensive lesson that you might not know what you don't know.
Now, I would tell you, I love AI. I love ChatGPT, but it's only as good as the person who is
Using
programming
it. Yeah.
it. So, especially if you're talking about personalizing
We
your
call that
story.
shades, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Euvonka just threw shades at you. All right, it's only as good as you are. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
That's funny. But um, in terms of telling your story in your heart, AI can't interpret that. There's an aspect of it that not only that you have to be there, and then there are things that will need to be pulled out that are more relevant to the story that you want to tell. It might be a good in terms of coming up with a skeleton and a start for that, but the meat of it is going to have to come from you. It's going to have to come from your heart. It can correct your grammar. It can do all of those things, but it won't be able to retain your voice in a way that you have. It can do a little bit, but it won't. It's no replacement for you.
Would it be safe to say, AI is it may be the ingredients or the recipe, but you still need to know how to cook. Like I could put all the recipes in the oven, but if I don't know the right temperature, and if I don't know how to mix the right way, and if I don't know how to that human touch, that there's a difference between grandma's food and strangers' food, and there's a reason, right? There's that human element that grandma had, that stranger
Exactly.
put the recipe together. Yeah, all right. See,
Exactly. Even as something as simple as potato salad.
yeah.
Some people can make okay potato salad, and some people make
Now
great
that's
potato salad.
Now that sounded personal, y'all. I'm just saying, there's somebody who that comment was directed to. Yeah, that somebody just got like a real shades thrown at him. Like, so whomever you are in Dr. Yovanka's life, mind your potato salad. Something is off.
It's the same ingredients, but it's something in the wrist about potato salad. I can't explain it, but it has to come from certain individuals. And so your book is like that. Your story is like that. There's only so much that somebody with the ingredients or some computer with the ingredients can do. It's never going to be a replacement for
Yeah,
your heart.
there you go. Well, I love that, and I appreciate that. Any books on the works?
Actually, I have a couple of books in the works. I have one that I am writing about reclaiming tomorrow. It is more specific on how to take your past and reclaim it so that it is for your good. It's a more specific, and then there's also going to be a course from that as well. And I'm also writing a manual for a chaplaincy um, program that actually is going to be accredited with a Bible college that is here in Southern California. So that one is going to be a 6-month program for people who are interested in becoming chaplains and understanding the basics of chaplaincy in many disciplines. So I'm writing that. That one is probably going to make it to press before my book Reclaiming Tomorrow.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're going to be very busy.
Yes.
And expensive. No, no, no. We always work with everybody, right? Well, look. First of all, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I know it's been a little while that we've been working on locking in this date, and we did it. We did it. I'm excited for our audience to hear your voice and to see your beautiful, angelic face, and
Thank
and
you
and
so
just
much.
just hear your story and hear your tenacity and where you're coming from and who you continue to become, right? Like it's a journey. I was at a service this morning, like a special service, and the gentleman that was leading service, well, it wasn't more service, it was more of a just a fellowship, and the gentleman looks in dead center to me, and he goes like, we're talking about being looked at in your family as the one who's always talking about scripture. Here he is again, he's preaching again, right? That, like the eyes would roll like, ugh. And he gave it in this example. He said, what you got to understand is that sometimes the people who are around you are full. They don't need any food. And as passionate as you are to say, eat some more, eat some more, eat some more, they're going to be like, dude, I am full. No, not right now. So you have to know when to give your food or when to just be like, all right, well, I'm going to leave it in the fridge. And if you're ready, come see me. I'm back there. And I feel like you fed us perfectly fine today. It didn't come across in a way that you are force feeding. So I say that to say, if you have the desire to grow in any area of your life, you definitely want to connect with Dr. Euvonka. And you've lived and experienced her now for the last just about an hour or so. Imagine to yourself how much more you would get if you were to work with her for 6 months. Imagine if you could learn from those life fundamentals that she's experienced in her life, personally and business-wise, ministry and socially from a day-to-day process. So I got to see you behind the Zooms and in person. I got to see you, off camera and on camera, and you are the most consistent person that I know. What you see is what you get, and that is something that I admire about you, and I think the world needs to experience you. So definitely make sure that you visit liveshacklefree.com. Make sure that you get a copy of the book. Make sure that you, at the very least, opt in to her website, daily motivational messages that come out. And stay in touch. She is a busy woman and keeps her hand a little bit on whatever matters and whatever's going to make an impact for you. So I can guarantee you, even if you say, I am on rock bottom, I have no money, I don't know what I'm doing in my life, she will still find a way to light up that little spark that you need for your life to get bigger, better, stronger. And, you heard it right here from Ali Mehdaoui in the ME Show. Any final remarks as we're coming to an end to this interview, Dr. Euvonka?
Yeah, I just want to encourage people that there's a quote that I like to say that says, a river can cut through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. Be persistent and don't give up on the things that you believe that God has put in your heart to do, because they matter. And the reason that God's put them in your heart is because it's needed. It's needed in the kingdom of God. It's needed in our world that we have today. And nobody can do what God has put in your heart like you can. There's no copy. There's no counterfeit that can come along and do you like you can do you. So I just want to encourage you. And I will extend that offer for anybody who signs up for my website, liveshacklefree.com. If you even just sign up to be a part of our mailing list, I will extend and give you a complimentary 8-day, 7-night vacation stay. Doesn't include the flight, but it will include your accommodations. You only have to pay a small activation fee, and the taxes on the room, because can't get around taxes, pay the taxes on that. It's over 3,000 locations that you'll have to choose from, and you have a year to use it. So if you do that, I'll extend that to you. There's no timeshare presentation to watch. It's just strictly you being able to enjoy accommodations in anywhere that's available when you go on our search engine to do that. Want to, just as a bonus, just to thank you for becoming a part of my community. Do that.
Thank you. Absolutely. Show some love. Don't touch that phone if you're driving, but if you are not, send a whole lot of love in those comments, and make sure that you're opting to talk to Euvonka Farabee, the website Amazing, amazing. Thank you for the love for our virtual live audience, right? Wink, wink. We
Absolutely.
definitely appreciate it. Look, I am so grateful, happy that I cannot hide it. We're going to do this again and again and again. I look forward to collaborating with you offline and online in many different things.
Thank
And,
you.
I'm excited about your journey and all the things that you have. And we definitely need to connect because I just from hearing this, there's so many areas that we can collaborate and monetize because, we kind of need that little bit of moolah to keep the gas and the light going, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a huge shout out to our team behind the scene who are doing all the edits and all the post production. A huge shout out to our COO, Claudia Maritza Mehdaoui, for keeping things rolling and moving forward. A huge shout out to our CTO and our partner, Tanya Tanika, who is making it all look smooth, and definitely the rest of our team, wherever you may be in the States or outside of it, for keeping things going. We are nothing without you, and we are grateful for you to do what you do each and every single day. Make sure you visit us at themestudios.net for all things that you need for media production, post production, whether we come to you or you want to come to us. If you want to get your name all over the internet, we got your back. And yes, make sure you visit liveshacklefree.com. With that, Ali Mehdaoui in here, one time, signing off. Dr. Euvonka, tell them peace out, everybody.
Peace out.
Tired of the same old routine? Don't worry. We've got your back. You were made for more. LeaveShackleFree.com helps you break free emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Start your freedom journey today at LeaveShackleFree.com. Break free, leave free.